to kind of change gears here and move towards more of an almost a historical examination, we've had federal regulations of guns since, I believe, 1934. The government has been increasing.
They tried to once before that, and it was a hilarious failure.
Right, yes. But since 1934, they've successfully been increasing the scale of its regulations of firearms to include, minimum wage, the country where the firearm was produced, heavier taxes on certain firearms, restricting and outright prohibiting certain firearms from certain groups of people. So I'm kind of curious, just overall, then, having addressed all of this, what regulations do you think should ideally be in place, and why do you think that this regulation has increased so much over the past 90 or so years?
So, fear and scapegoatism, right? So, why did we get the NFA, right? And so, there's the Toyota management philosophy is to find the source of a problem, ask why 5 times, right? So, why did we get the NFA? St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Why did the St. Valentine's Day Massacre happen? Well, there was some mobsters who had taken control of a city and it was being challenged. And so there was, wait, hold on. Why did the mobsters have so much control? Well, they were engaged in alcohol. They were selling alcohol and they gained a lot of power doing this. Why were they able to gain so much power selling alcohol? Well, we made it so that only they could do it. And why do we do that, right? And so then... So you get all the way to the beginning, right, of that, and it's because we needed a scapegoat for the problem that we had created through Prohibition. Just like in the 80s and 90s, we needed a scapegoat for the problem that we created through drug prohibition, right? It's always about gang violence, and what's gang violence is turf wars. Well, what's turf wars? Well, it's sales territories. For what? For the thing that you made it illegal to just sell online and let everybody just enjoy their part of the market. So it's all that to say, Prohibition is the source of all gun control. It's the reason that we were able to bottle it up and sell it the way we did. Ideally, what regulations should be in place? I don't think that there needs to be any specific laws. I think that English common law and the tort system handle everything that would need to be in place. So I think that common law would, create a mechanism to recover from companies that sold faulty guns, as they did at the founding era, right? There were companies that sold some bad guns and they got in trouble. And I think that is fine. Aside from that, I mean, people who are, I think if you're dangerous enough to be disarmed, you should probably be incarcerated. So have a reasonable standard of who you incarcerate. And I don't, and maybe just those things that were felonies at the common law, like arson, like real crimes. And I think that if you have to lock them in the box, you keep them in the box until they can be a good boy. And if they can be a good boy, they can come out of the box and have their gun. Because at the founding era, it wasn't like we had widespread, horrifying violence and all this stuff. In fact, oftentimes they would keep your property locked up, at the front and hand it to you. And there were stories of people who would take their carbine and go into the woods to go and, do their little life, kill a squirrel or whatever, So I don't think I guess, suffice to say, I think the common law provides everything that would need to be common law, both in civil and criminal context, right? Because murder, common law, felony, right? It handles everything that needs to be handled with firearms.
The solution does not lie so much in passing regulations of who is allowed to own firearms, arbitrarily or anything like that.
Right.
And furthermore, like you were saying, as far as prohibition being one of the driving forces behind, gun control and things such as that, what I'm finding is that almost seems to mirror a lot of what still goes on to this day under gun control legislation, where passing these laws end up preventing the most responsible members of society from essentially using them, or like one could in the case of selling alcohol in those days, and instead, shifts that to the most, criminal, people to actually run forth without any with considerably less opposition, really.
Right. Well, so it's like Prohibition is such a wonderful example because it's so directly on point, right? But in the like nowadays, what's the most popular alcohol? Right. Beer and wine.
Yes. Yeah.
Before Prohibition, what was the most popular alcohol? Beer and wine.
Yep.
During Prohibition, bathtub gin.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think that is? Right? You've only made it worse. So it's, but you know, people can't accept that. Sometimes the answer is to just not touch it, right? And just unfortunately, in the gun context, the immediate and visceral reaction to people taking matters into their own hands and like making their own guns or, you know, whatever, which is very important and frankly one of the coolest, most badass things an individual can do is to like reflexively lock them in a cage, which I think is it's just never made too much sense to me.